Okay, so everyone who knows who's either heard of my group or heard me talk about it, or is the players, of course, knows that there's one person who I have left out so far. And this is mainly because I can't honestly think of a lot you did. And this is Vea's character. And this goes back and forth. There were a few moments that stick out in my mind, but in all honesty, I can't remember a lot of things happening for Vea's character. So to start out, when we first started our campaign, Vea was playing Lydia Sendersnow, I think her name was, and she was a human barbarian. And she didn't really last long. The character didn't have much fleshed out about her. The biggest thing that she really did was had a couple chairs broken across her back, and just, I don't like that kill. Not a lot going on. This was, of course, our very first session. This is the player's first time playing D&D. Going on to there, I gave her the opportunity to switch to a different character. What had happened is, I think I already explained this, I had personal stuff going on. She picked up another group and made a different character that she grew more attached to. It died in that group, and then she brought it over to my group, because why not? We were at everyone was at level 1. There's really no reason to say, no, you can't bring that character over. And we made an excuse. Basically, the barbarian just wandered away, and the scion came in, and the scion's name was Luna. So the game goes on from there, and her biggest two moments that I can think of off the top of my head happened fairly early on. I don't remember the exact setup. Basically, they were going into a dungeon, and this was one that I had pulled off of, I think it was Donjon is the name of it. D-O-N-J-O-N. And one of the things said there are 12 dwarves in this room. Now, the awkward thing about this was it was a 3x3 room. There is no physical way for 12 dwarves to fit in this room. So I scaled it down. I cut it in half. I said there were 6 dwarves in this room. That at least gave... There's still going to be a good fight, hopefully, and my players will actually be able to fit in the room. And this is a little bit more on... honestly, this is almost more of Arbogast's story. But basically what happened is they go into the room, and they see this, and our monk, who has a -3 to his charisma rolls, tries to roll an intimidate, and he nat 20s it. And the dwarves say, "Oh no, we're not going to fight." And he rolled again, and he rolls another 20 to make them throw all of their weapons to him. And I think most of their clothes. But it's at this point that Vea comes in, and she says, "Okay, I want to roll my intimidate." And she ends up, although she has a much better charisma score, she rolls a 1. So at this point, the group that is in the room, which is just the 2 of them, is getting mobbed by naked dwarves, and only one of them has an axe. So it's kind of this awkward situation. Later on, I don't think it was the same dungeon. It might have been, but it was either the same dungeon or the next dungeon. They go into a room, and it's full of like gnomes and stuff. Gnomes and halflings mainly, I think I said it was. And it's basically the office room. The people in this room are doing paperwork, taking care of the money, those kind of things for the cult. Which in story, it's gotten big enough that they actually need something like this. The cult of Nihilus that the group's fighting against. So they come into this room, and they're like, who are you? What are you doing here? And Vea's character Luna is like, well, we're here to replace you. We're taking over for this. And they're like, oh, we thought we weren't supposed to be replaced for another half hour or whatever, or there was X amount of time. Doesn't matter. And she's like, no, we're taking over for you. Rolls her bluff and rolls high enough that she just completely neutralizes a fight. From there on, I think it was either before or after, another situation occurred where she was in a face-to-face with the big bad guy. Basically, I had picked up or in one of my previous games, I don't know if that's going to be heard or not. There's people doing yard work outside. In one of my previous games with my other group, my DM kind of set up this psyker battle. I think I mentioned it before when I was it was in Rogue Trader. He set up this psyker battle, and I wanted to do something like that to a degree. I wanted to have some situation where the player was going to have sort of the decision to turn on the group or not. And effectively what I had is that Luna woke up one night and she was in a different room. Not the room she went to, not at the inn where she went to bed. She was suddenly in a much nicer room, but at the other end was Vex, the big bad guy. And from there, she really it was kind of one of those awkward situations where she knew her level 1, or not, she was much higher than level 1, she was probably level 3 at this point. Her level 3 character couldn't take on this guy, and she couldn't, he was level 10. If she could, then I would have failed horribly as a DM. So she accepted that he was going, if he wanted to kill her, he could kill her. So they go back and forth for a little bit, and he eventually comes to the point where he offers her power. It's one of those things where this power, you have an inept power, or it's not inept, that's not the term. You have an inborn power within you, and I can unlock it. All you have to do is agree to join me. Continue, be my eyes on the inside. Go about your day as normal, but when I call on you, you will help me. And she thinks about this, and she agrees, but she's lying. So I make her roll a bluff check, and I believe she fails. And he just flat out says, you know what? I know you're lying to me. At the same time, I believe that once you see the power, you will be convinced. And this is something that never kind of came about. Because what he does is he puts his hand on her head, she feels this rush of power, and then she passes out. And later she's carried back into the inn, and the guys make jokes about this. But that's about all that comes of it. I've had situations where it has come up, and that's sort of been the biggest tool of it. It's been my tool to neutralize this character. Because, as I mentioned before, she literally walks into rooms, hits everyone, and they're either dead or next to dead. And it's kind of been this disrupting thing. So in certain situations, I will simply say he walks up to her, snaps his fingers, and she blacks out. The rest of the group doesn't see her pass out because her body is under his control. And she immediately starts using a ability called Annihilation Field. Anyone who's played Mass Effect knows what that is. It's basically a AoE ability that hurts any enemies within the field. And that's something that I put onto her. And she's used it to her benefit, and every time she's used it, I've kind of made it so that there's obviously some corruption going on within her. Later on, because of this, I made it very clear that he has sort of a... basically, he got what he wanted no matter what. Because one night, Vea's character, Luna, is sleeping, and she wakes up in the middle of the night, and again, she isn't where she is. In fact, she's not even in her own body. So she's looking around, and she sees Vex, and he's obviously messed up in the head. At this point, this is after he had lost the War of Hyde, which I might go into more depth later. But it's basically where Vex invaded the Leodin's home city. And he's going crazy, so to speak. Like, Vex is visibly going insane. Before, he was sort of a pagan min, kind of very controlled, almost like a very classy person, but you could see the cracks, but they weren't very big. At this point, the cracks have completely blown open, and you see this guy has lost it. So he's sitting there and he's talking and he's saying, "Oh, these." It's like, and he's like, "Oh, I need the weapon. Do you know where the weapon is?" And one of the guys off out of sight says, "Oh yes, I know exactly where it is." And at this point, he looks directly at Luna, or where Luna is seeing through, and he starts laughing. He's like, "Oh, you think I can't see you? You think I don't know you're there?" He's directly or indirectly talking to her. And he's like, "Oh, I want you to come here. I need you to fight this for me." And he's basically luring her, saying, "Oh, you must come to this weapon area." And it's at this point that he walks up, grabs the body, and snaps its neck. Vea wakes up, and next to her is a character who's kind of become... it's an NPC character that's kind of become, at this point, she's become a love interest almost. But the character is basically sitting in their room, which they didn't know, and it's because they explained that, "Oh, I heard you talking and yelling," and I think he wasn't talking. He might not have been talking to you. He might have been talking to me. And this will come up later, potentially. I'm not going to give too much away because I know my players watch these. So, at that point, a lot of stuff doesn't really happen. Well, stuff happens, stuff goes on. But roleplay-wise, nothing really does happen to Vea until we get towards the current time. Most recently, the most stuff she has had happen is we had the NPC character. I had the NPC character recently get kidnapped. And at first they were like, "How is this person getting kidnapped? They're supposed to be stronger than us." Which isn't entirely true at this stage. Effectively, this is an administrator. They can fight, but they're more of an administrator at this point. And so they get kidnapped, and they find out that it's by vampires and a cult that's led by someone who almost killed a couple of our players. They had a bunch of orbs of fireball. I think it was the 8th or something, the 8 or 4, something like that. Basically, they had a really powerful item, and it almost killed the party. So after this, they're like, "Okay, how do we find them?" Like, "Oh, it's in the basement, in the back room." And the first person to go down there is Vea. And they find the two, and she cuts the NPC loose, and immediately she just hugs her, and I'm not sure if it's out of character or just in character, she has no idea what to do. She's like, it's this awkward situation where she has no idea what to do. And I sort of start leaning towards that this character has fallen, there's a term for it and I can't think of it. The character's fallen in love with you because you saved them. And I'm almost thinking, you know, because recently when I do this, I've watched a show called Shimoneta, which is not going to go into much detail about it, but basically one of the characters falls madly in love with the main character and is completely insane, stalkerish kind of obsession. And I dabble around with the thought of maybe she does that for a moment, which she really didn't in the end, but it does happen to a slight degree. Because after this, they decide to go hunt down Hoodlum Prime. They basically get a bunch of rumors that there is some crimes going around. And they say, you know what, we're going to go hunt down the person in charge of this. Because before, there was kind of a Hoodlum Prime, for lack of a better term. This is their term. This is what they keep calling basically the guy who is almost a mob boss who runs the entire city. There isn't, but in their mind there was. So they go hunting this guy down. And Luna's character steps up to... They walk into this alley, and they use her as bait, is what happened. And so she walks into this alley, and this guy comes up to her and starts trying to intimidate her, trying to get money out of her, threatening her. And out of nowhere, another guy comes up behind them. Luckily for her, this is the time where Arbogast came around the corner. And this is the time where this character probably takes the most damage. Oh no, she almost died before. She was dropped down to 1 HP. Died. She was almost dropped before, but she was dropped down to 1 HP before. But she gets shanked by this thief. Does massive amounts of damage. And then she gets punched in the face, which she's never had happen before. She has never been cold-cocked by a guy out of nowhere. And then the fight ensues. They're low-level thieves, and they quickly get killed. Luckily, the paladin wasn't around. He might have had something to say. He tends to every once in a while. But they get out of the situation, and they go back. And this character, who is named Arya, I should have probably mentioned that sooner, is waiting for them. And she's like, "Oh my God, what happened? Oh my, you're injured. I need to help you." And so that happens. And shortly after, a few sessions later, Arya ends up saving Luna from a incubus, which strangely have no stats in the, or at least no stats that are easily available. So I just had to use succubus stats. So I don't know if I actually did that right. And I'm trying to think of other situations, and there's really not. And I'm going to apologize here, Vea, for when you watch this. It might be me that I'm not paying attention, and the language, the accent is a little hard to decipher sometimes, so I might miss a lot of things. But this comes down to sort of a gameplay isn't good for stories, almost kind of thing. Because the gameplay is going to go and go and go. And unless it happens right then and there, you're not really going to talk about it much. But I think that covers up my main three people. Those are the players who have kind of run this campaign. Well, not run this campaign, but these are the players who have been here from the beginning and are here today. I might go over the other ones, the short-term guys, and then I'm definitely going to talk about some other things. I've had some other ideas on my back burners, but oh wow, that autofocus is bad. Come on, webcam. Well, I'm going to leave you guys with this horrible quality of me. And I will see you guys next time. Game on.